Welcome in to the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I'm Steven Serda, joined by my guy, Rocky Magana. Rocky, Chiefs win 20-17 Monday Night Football over the New York Giants and improved to 4-4 on the season. All of that should be great, but this game didn't really make you feel any better about the Chiefs taking on the Green Bay Packers next week. It didn't really make you feel any better about what's going on this season and about all of the problems that they've had. I was just mentioning this at the end of the game, and the Chiefs defense did well today. Another strong performance by them. We've talked about their second halves the last 3 weeks, and that they put it together today. It's against the Giants, though, a bad football team and not a particularly special offense. But they did come up big at the end with back-to-back sacks by Chris Jones and Frank Clark to seal the game. And at the end of this football game, Rocky, I was more confident in the Chiefs defense getting the win and sealing the deal than I was in the Chiefs offense scoring and being the reason that they won this game, because really they weren't the reason that they won this game. Like, I don't feel any better about this thing at all headed or taking on the Green Bay Packers next week. Like, I just don't feel any better about where the Chiefs are at whatsoever after that game.
No, I mean, confident is a relative term. Yeah, we felt more confident about the Chiefs defense, but if we're being honest, I didn't really feel confident in either side of the ball tonight. Neither team played mistake-free football. Both teams put themselves in, both sides of the ball put themselves in bad position time and time again. Both sides committed very costly errors. It almost seemed like the same story over and over again until late in the game when we got those back-to-back sacks. But it was the same people making the same mistakes. Dan Sorensen looked lost. Ben Neiman was getting drug all over the field when he was trying to make tackles. And other than Chris Jones getting kicked back inside and actually being a bit of a dominating force early in the game, it was just as much about the Giants not taking advantage of their opportunities as it was about the Chiefs, making something happen.
Yeah, we talked about it all week long at Arrowhead Pride. The Giants simply aren't a good football team. And there was a point in this game where you were like, they're going to lose this. They're going to lose this football game. And it's concerning because I talked about it this week. I know we've written pieces on it. The Chiefs media availabilities this week just had a different tone, a different vibe. And it was almost sad. It was like somber, where it feels like they don't have answers for what's going on right now. It feels like they don't know what to do to fix the problems. And they opened the game up strong. I thought they looked fantastic on the opening drive. They still couldn't get anything deep down the field, but Mahomes was just moving the ball at will. They were picking up chunk plays. They moved it inside the Giants 10, and then another freak turnover, I guess, fluke turnover, but it was kind of a bad pass that I think Josh Gordon probably had a better chance to catch than he showed. And then it bounced off of Jerick McKinnon's helmet and went for another interception. And at this point, the Chiefs have 19 turnovers. They lead the NFL in turnovers, and it happens every week. And so it's not just fluky anymore. And the percentages would argue that that's inevitably going to come back down to earth. Like, it's just got to fall into their favor occasionally. It just hasn't happened, though. Like, it just is who they are at this point. We're 8 weeks into the season. Like, we're nearly 50% of the way through the NFL regular season, and this is just who they are. And it doesn't feel like they have any answers offensively. And even after a win, you want to try to find the positives in that. I just don't see how we can feel good about them taking on the Green Bay Packers, who just beat the only undefeated team in the NFL on Thursday night. And they did it without Devontae Adams. They did it without Alan Lazard. They've already been battling injuries themselves, and they did it without their defensive coordinator. Like, the Chiefs weren't facing that kind of adversity in this game against a 2-5 football team. And I don't think the Chiefs are capable of overcoming something like that, especially when this is the performance we got from them against that team tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, the turnover situation could have been much worse. Mahomes got bailed out on an offsides by the Giants on a second interception. And then Trey Smith may have, he saved the game by hopping on that fumble. I mean, that's 2 turnovers that we got back. I think the most concerning thing about this is it's not rookies, it's not backup players that are turning the ball over and making these mistakes. It's the core of the team. It's your stars, it's your highest paid players on the team who are going out there and turning the ball over and being careless with it. And at some point, yeah, you say it has to come back to the mean, but maybe it doesn't. I mean, there's some seasons where it just doesn't. There's some seasons where teams just don't take care of the ball and they lose a lot of football games because of it. And the Chiefs look like a team right now. They're going to lose a lot of football games if they don't take care of the ball. And I don't know what other wake-up call they need at this point, because they've said everything in the press conferences that you're supposed to say, and they say that they've been practicing it, but it's not showing up on the field. And so there's a disconnect there somewhere, where I think they started the season thinking they were something that they weren't, and we thought they were something that they weren't. But right now, obviously Mahomes is still a very young player, but this core looks like a team whose best football is behind them.
Yeah, and I think that we set the bar too high, and part of that is because they've just been so exceptional with Patrick Mahomes. And Travis Kelce had to get in on the turnover party tonight, putting the football on the ground. But they set the bar so high in the first few years of Patrick Mahomes that this season, this is what teams look like inevitably when they try to extend the window a little bit too long. And it feels like that's what the Chiefs have done, because they simply aren't a good football team right now. Like, there's just no other way to put it. You just barely escaped a Monday night home loss to the New York Giants, who are a bad football team. And we had Craig Carton on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network earlier this week from WFAN in New York, and he said, why would you guys even be worried about this? He was like, you're in a different class than the New York Giants. But that was not the case tonight. Like, this Chiefs team did not look like they were in a different class than the New York Giants. They look like they are an average at best football team at this point in the season. And I don't see how you could come away from that game with any other take, to be completely honest.
No, I mean, and right now, Patrick Mahomes and the rest of the offense, they look like a team playing scared on offense. Patrick Mahomes looks like he's not trusting his eyes. There were times there were guys open downfield today, and he went underneath because he was afraid of turning the ball over again. He looks like he's a guy who's afraid of throwing the game away. And he, especially after he almost threw the game away, you saw that Andy Reid changed his play calling. Even they went back and they just started running the ball. And I tweeted out that if I'm Andy Reid, I can't believe I'm saying this with Patrick Mahomes as my quarterback, but I wouldn't throw another pass the rest of this game. At that point, you have to mitigate your team's mistakes. And with Mahomes at quarterback and him being the generational talent that he is, I thought that we would never be saying this, but that's where we're at right now. He is not the same player that he's been in years past. And that doesn't mean he can't get back to where he is. I mean, he's still Mahomes. Mahomes will still always be Mahomes, but he's got to get right. Right now, he's just not right.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that for a minute, because I messaged you during the game and I just said, it feels like he's playing with the yips. And I was going back and forth with Show and BK in our text chain for our show. And, Ron was like, well, that's not what the yips are, because I'm not a baseball person. So maybe I don't have a full grasp of the baseball yips, but that's what it feels like to me. Like, if we're trying to find a word to give to what Patrick Mahomes is going through right now, he looks scared. He's making throws that are just inaccurate. He's making poor decisions and he's forcing things, and guys simply aren't getting open. And I know Tyreek Hill wound up having a pretty nice night, but I'm still questioning how healthy him and Travis Kelce are right now, because it seems like even they are struggling to get open, which has never been a problem for those two. You worry about everybody else, but even them, and I understand they're taking away the big play, but I don't think there should be an excuse for the offense to look like this, I still don't think that there is an excuse for them to be quite this bad. And part of that is going to fall on Patrick Mahomes. His ceiling is the best player in the sport. And we've already seen him hit that ceiling before. And I think he's going to get back to that ceiling one day because he is just exceptional at playing football. And I don't doubt that he can get back to that, but he's just not there right now. He's just not playing that way right now. And we've seen Tom Brady go through regular season struggles. He struggled on Sunday against the New Orleans Saints, but we've seen him, even with New England, we saw him have some down regular seasons where they struggled, but still wound up making the playoffs because they're the Patriots. We've seen Aaron Rodgers go through down seasons where he just struggles. And a couple years ago, before he won the MVP, we were talking like, oh, Aaron Rodgers is done. And so no one in the sport is above that, right? I don't think that anybody in the sport is above having a down year. It's just you had never seen it from Mahomes. And so our expectations were too high because we just didn't believe it was possible for him. But we're in the middle of it right now. Like, this just feels like a down year. It just feels like this Chiefs team needs to retool, revamp, figure some things out in the offseason because it just feels like their heart's not in it this year.
Yeah, I mean, and to back you up, my definition of the yips is that it's when a player gets so much in their head that they can't even do a routine thing that they normally do. And that's kind of what this looks like. He's missing throws that he can usually make no look and in his sleep, and he's just not hitting them right now. And to your point, he looks like a player who doesn't trust throwing the ball to anybody not named Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce right now. He looks like if he's not passing it to one of those two guys, he's not sure about if the ball's going to be caught or end up in the other team's hands. And you can't play Chiefs football like that. That's not the way this offense is designed. And it's easy to defend on also. I mean, yes, Tyreek Hill had a pretty good game today, but a lot of that were manufactured touches to get him yards after the catch. There wasn't any downfield passing really at all today. And I think that for Mahomes to get back on track, yeah, he does need to hit those underneath routes, but he has to get his confidence back. He's got to sling it a little bit and hit those passes. But at the same time, it may take the entire season to get Mahomes back right. And it may take Mahomes throwing 20 interceptions until he gets back right, to swing his way out of this, so to speak.
Yeah, and I just think that we got to put some of this on Andy Reid. Andy Reid, and I'm not questioning who Andy Reid is and what he has accomplished in the NFL. Andy Reid's one of the greatest coaches ever in the history of football. He's one of the greatest offensive minds that we have ever seen. But when you look at a team like the Los Angeles Rams right now, who are playing like one of the best teams in football, and even, the 49ers are struggling a little bit, but Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay are like two offensive-minded coaches where you say, like, you put any guy in that offense and they're going to find a way to utilize them and get guys open and set up the screen game and the zone running game and all of that stuff. And those guys do that on a weekly basis. It just seems like the Chiefs can't find any rhythm offensively, and part of that might just be that when Mahomes can't make the big plays downfield, when he can't get outside the pocket and create out of structure the way that he's used to, like, this whole thing has just kind of unraveled to the point where they're not doing anything well offensively. And at that point, it's on Andy Reid. Andy Reid has to start looking at what they're doing on a weekly basis and say, okay, we got to start manufacturing guys open. We got to start finding ways to get guys touches and get them into space. And they did it a couple of times with Cole Hardman, had those little sweet plays that one of them went for a big gain towards the end of the game. And then he had another one early on, I think went for like 10 yards. And those are good plays. I want to see more of that stuff where we try to manufacture chunk yardage plays, and it doesn't necessarily have to come with the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands. You got to get the ball moving some other way to get his confidence back up, because I don't know if you noticed it, but he did it, I felt like 25 times tonight, where he dropped back, pump fake, pump fake, pump fake, run, like, and or bad pass. And it's something that I'm seeing him do on a weekly basis now, over and over and over again. And so that's got to fall on Andy Reid. When your superstar player has the yips and it looks like he is just struggling and just feels like he cannot get anything going right now, then Andy Reid has to step in and say, okay, how do we get this right? Because the only way we win is if that guy is playing at an MVP caliber level. And that's the only way we're going to get back into this playoff race.
Well, yeah. I mean, and the thing about it with those pump fakes too is if you look at it, there's windows there that last year Mahomes hits. Mahomes hits some of those windows that he's pump faking this year. He just doesn't trust himself right now that he's going to hit those windows. I think it starts with running the ball. I mean, you saw what happened today when the Chiefs committed to running the ball. I mean, Derek Gore was a revelation on that one drive, putting up 41 yards on 7 carries, for a touchdown. I mean, that was the best that the offense looked all night, was when the game got balanced and you gave the ball and just ran it right behind Trey Smith and you let him bully people.
Yeah, I will say that Andy's first 15 tonight felt good. It felt like the first time we've got a good first 15 from Andy in a while. But we need more of that. Like they just need more of that throughout the game. And they were moving the ball early, and then it felt like actually once they got out of the scripted stuff, that's when the offense just said, "Nah, we can't move the ball anymore. Like we're just gonna keep struggling and turning the football over and just not being able to accomplish much."
Well, yeah, and so much is made, like you mentioned, of Andy Reid being this great offensive mind, and if he's the offensive mind that everybody says he is, then you got to be able to make adjustments on the fly, and you can't just script success. And you got to be able to look at the game film and you got to be able to make changes to what you're doing in order to have success down the line. Everybody says Andy Reid has a stack of index cards where he's just writing up plays all day long. Well, let's see some of these plays, Andy, because right now what you have been doing all season and what you did last season, it's not working anymore. You got to be able to give us something that's going to be able to beat the cover 2 on a consistent basis. It's not like it's a new defense that people are playing against you. This is a defense that's been around for years.
Yeah, well, that's what's the most frustrating thing, too, is that we know the defense that they see every week now. And I haven't, looked up the numbers just yet, but I would imagine that the Giants probably didn't blitz very much in this football game, the same way that every other defense has been playing them. And Andy Reid's just too smart to not be able to figure that out. So I don't know why they haven't figured it out yet. That's what's baffling about it. And 8 weeks into the NFL season, where we're at is the Chiefs need to just run the football. That's not where I thought we were going to be, but that's where we are. And they simply have to run the football more. Yeah, Derek Gore looked fantastic in the first half. They went away from him in the second half and started feeding Darrell a little bit more. And Darrell had some nice plays too. If it's a 2-back committee thing until Clyde gets back, whatever. Yeah, let's just run the football more. Let's set up the play action passing game, and that'll free up some of those shots down the field because that's what they need. Like, he almost had that one to Tyreek Hill, but Mahomes waited too long to throw the football, and then he underthrew Tyreek, and the play got broken up. I have to believe if he completes that pass, he looks like a different player. Like he just looks like a different person if he completes that, because he hasn't had that this season. And it feels like he just needs one. He just needs one to remind him what it's like. And then it's like, okay, now we got this. Now we can figure this thing out. Andy's got to manufacture that stuff. If you look at what the 49ers do on a consistent basis with Deebo Samuel, who's having an insane season. He's the only player in the NFL right now with 3 games of more than 150 receiving yards. And he had an 83-yard screen pass on Sunday. Like, Andy's capable of doing that. We've seen Andy manufacture incredible screen games with Alex Smith. Why can't we do that with Patrick Mahomes? You haven't had to do it with Patrick Mahomes, but let's do that. Let's manufacture some of that stuff, because if the 49ers can do it with Jimmy G under center and Deebo Samuel can break off 83-yard runs, the Chiefs certainly have the personnel to pull that off too. So I just need to see more of that from Andy Reid. And it feels like it feels like everybody is just kind of smacking their heads right now, trying to figure out what the hell to do, and nobody has any answers.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they're just trying to do the same thing over and over again, expecting to have different results. Kind of like, to what you said a little bit. And I never thought that I would say, let's bust out the Alex Smith playbook, when Patrick Mahomes is our quarterback. But I mean, we're 8 weeks into the season. This isn't an anomaly. This season is 50% over. We're at break glass in case of emergency with this offense. Because right now, if we continue to play this way, we're not going to win very many games going down the line. We're not going to play very many teams that are as bad as the Giants moving forward. And if you come out here and you look like this against the Giants, the next week against Green Bay, you're going to look like you did against the Titans. I mean, and that's just a fact. And I love this team. I love the Chiefs. I don't like sitting here every single week and talking about how bad they are, but they're just not a good football team at this point.
Yeah, I tweeted out before the game started tonight. Let's get a good one. Let's have fun on the post-game show. Let's be positive. So there's just not a lot of positive takes on the offense right now. There's just not a lot to feel good about. But I guess if there is one silver lining from this football game, the Chiefs defense is playing better. Like for the most part, they're playing better. It's still a fireable offense to put Daniel Sorensen on the field at any point in the game, but they keep doing it. He keeps proving you he can't cover anybody, certainly can't cover tight ends. I don't know why they continue to put him on the football field, but the positives from the defense, Willie Gay had a tremendous game, coming up with another interception, had a couple other big plays throughout the game. Willie Gay looks like he is going to be big for this defense moving forward, and I'm excited to see that. They haven't had an athletic linebacker like Willie Gay since Derek Johnson. And I hope he continues to, carve out a massive role in this defense and continues to show that he can be a playmaker for this defense, because they haven't had a playmaker at that level in years now. And Willie Gay has shown that he can be that for this defense.
I mean, yes, Willie Gay was excellent today. I think when you look at the defense, it was really a tale of two stories. It was the young guys stepping up and making plays and looking really, really good. And it was the older guys who've been on this team for a while not making plays and looking really, really bad. I tweeted out that Dan Sorensen's the most consistent player on this team. He's consistently not where he's supposed to be, and he's consistently giving up big plays. You can always count on Dan Sorensen to not make the play. And I think that at this point, there can't be any sacred cows. It has to be out with the old, in with the new. I thought that Tyrann Mathieu especially needed a big game today, and he didn't play poorly, but he was a non-factor. He played meh. He looked meh out there, and I think after the week that he had, he needed to come out and show the Chiefs fans that he was committed to the team, he was committed to the defense, and he was the player that he says he is. And we just didn't see that tonight. And I think he's a very talented guy, but he didn't show up tonight. He wasn't there when the team needed him.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to be your most important defensive player, then you just need him to make plays. And it feels like I will say that he's been playing better recently, in my opinion, but it does feel like he's been absent in a lot of these performances. Charvarius Ward wound up having a decent night tonight. He did wind up drawing a penalty late in the game that could have been costly. It wound up not hurting them that bad. But he played okay. And then L'Jarius Sneed had a rough night. Just couldn't seem to stay on his feet for some reason.
He needs new cleats.
Yeah, I don't know.
Cleats he was wearing.
I don't know what was going on with Sneed, but it at least made you feel good that the pass rush came alive a little bit. I mean, hell, Frank Clark got a sack tonight. So at the end of the game. And Chris Jones, the Chiefs were moving him around still. He was playing inside and out. But on the interior tonight, Chris Jones looked like, okay, that's that dominant Chris Jones that we're used to seeing. And so maybe Chris Jones, that wrist injury has really been bothering him. And maybe he's getting closer to 100% healthy now, because he looked fantastic when he was on the interior tonight. But I think some of that could just have to be with the Giants having a poor offensive line. But you got to take the wins where you can get them when the season's moving like this. So I think you should feel good about the Chiefs pass rush a little bit, at least if it's only for tonight. Before you got to start looking ahead and preparing for the Green Bay Packers, you can at least feel good about that tonight, and you can go get your Big Macs tomorrow.
Yeah, I feel better about Chris Jones and Frank Clark than I did before the game. I'm not saying I feel good about them yet, but I definitely feel better about them after the performance they put up today. I did see Frank Clark limping on the sideline. It looked like a little bit after that final play. And so you'll have to, kind of see if he's going to be hobbled at all or slowed down again. If he does, that's going to be really unfortunate because it looked like for the first time today that like he said, he was a little bit more comfortable and was actually a factor, in the pass rush. And Chris Jones, it may have been that New York has a bad offensive line, but everybody's going to use this as the example of saying, move him back inside because he looked like a wrecking ball in there. He was just pushing the guard straight back into the pocket, time and time again, and I agree. Put Chris Jones back inside. He looks like a defensive tackle and not an edge player.
Yeah, the Chris Jones at defensive end experiment just hasn't paid off for the Chiefs. And yeah, I think it's clear that he can be a game wrecker on the inside, and that's just where he needs to be. Like we need to quit it with that experiment altogether, because there was a big third down play where he was on the edge, and it was just like, what are we doing here? Like put him back on the inside and let him go get Daniel Jones, because that's where Chris Jones eats, and that helps the entire defensive line create pressure. I do want to mention before we get out of here, the NFL trade deadline is tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central Time here in Kansas City. Obviously, the Chiefs are, making calls. They were reportedly interested in Melvin Ingram, but the Steelers refused to trade him within the AFC. There was reports that they might be interested in Marlon Mack. Texans wide receiver Brandon Cooks could probably be had from the Houston Texans, who are looking to shed salary and sell pieces off to acquire draft picks. Allen Robinson is a guy that is on the franchise tag this season. Is having a really bad year in Chicago, and they just can't really throw the football. He could be a guy that could potentially be on the move. The NFL trade deadline in the NFL is usually pretty quiet. We saw Von Miller get shipped to the Rams, and that's a big time deal that, drastically impacts a team that is at the top of the NFC right now, and they look like a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. So that's a huge move for them. But I'm curious, Rocky, ahead of the trade deadline, if the Chiefs can make any move tomorrow, if they could acquire one piece that could drastically affect this team or maybe change anything, I'm curious what you hope that would be, or what you just want to see them do if they do anything at all.
So the player that I want the Chiefs to get more than anybody else, I don't even know if he's available. He's not starting right now, but it would be New Orleans linebacker Quan Alexander. He's got 4.4 speed. He hasn't played exceptionally well this year. He hasn't played exceptionally poorly, but he's athletic. He's as athletic as Willie Gay is. I think that you bring him on the field, you push Ben Neiman off of the field, and I think that in itself instantly upgrades this defense. And I think that if you have that level of athleticism in your linebacking core and you start Bolton, Gay, and then Alexander, I think that you got some guys who can just fly around the field and make plays and cause trouble. And so that's where I would go. As long as they don't go with Deshaun Jackson, I'm happy.
Yeah, I don't think that I would be very thrilled if they traded for Deshaun Jackson either. I don't think Deshaun Jackson changes your offense that much. He's McCole Hardman. All Deshaun Jackson can do at this point in his career is just run straight down the field and go deep, and you try to hit him for long plays. He's still really fast. He's just not an all-around wide receiver anymore, and he gets hurt all the time. So I'm not really interested in Deshaun Jackson. Brandon Cooks is really intriguing to me, though, because he's cheap the rest of the season if the Chiefs were to somehow acquire him. And Brandon Cooks is a seriously underrated player who's done nothing but produce. And he would be that consistent other wide receiver who could maybe open things up in the offense for the team. It's I know adding players to the defense seems like the right move and trying to add to the pass rush because it's been so down this season. But at the end of the day, if this team is trying to make the playoffs, if they're trying to compete at all this season, it's still going to go through the offense. It's still going to live and die with Patrick Mahomes. So if I'm the Chiefs and I can acquire Brandon Cooks at the trade deadline tomorrow, I am trying to make that happen at all costs, because I do think that a player like that, a wide receiver of that caliber, adding him to the mix of Kelsey, Hill, Mahomes, I think that could wind up being a game changer for this offense. It might finally actually like be the spark that gets this thing going for this team, because it's just unlike anything that we've seen in a long time since that run a few years back with Alex Smith, where they started 1-5. Like, this is about as bad as it feels right now, even though they're 4-4.
Yeah, it does. And I'll go on record by saying if they trade for Brandon Cooks, I'll sign off on that. I am 100% on board with that. He like you said, he is that number 2 wide receiver we've been looking for. But the Chiefs do feel like a team that needs to do something drastic on offense if they're not going to throw. They're either going to be sellers or they need to make a move, because right now, if they stand pat, they're not good enough. And they haven't. They like when Sammy Watkins was healthy, the offense looked different. When he was here, the offense just works better with 2 legitimate wide receivers on the field, and so they need to get somebody. And like you said, I think Brandon Cooks is probably the most cost-effective option at this point. For the talent, the most bang for your buck.
Yeah, I would love to see Brandon Cooks in this offense. I would be shocked if the Texans hold on to him tomorrow. It feels like he's going to have an opportunity to go somewhere. Hopefully it's here to Kansas City, because I do think that could be a game-changing move for this offense, the way that they've struggled this season. He's Rocky Magana. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. I'm Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. Before we get out of here, we do need to ask that you guys please subscribe to the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. And while you're there, leave a 5-star review. We're in the 5-star business. So, leave some kind words. Talk about some of the shows that you love. We've got plenty of shows on a weekly basis. Coming up tomorrow, the Arrowhead Pride Editor Show with Pete Sweeney and John Dixon will be out tomorrow afternoon. They'll have plenty of takeaways from tonight's Chiefs and Giants game as well. And if you're listening on the podcast, stick around immediately following this show. We will have all of the Chiefs post-game press conferences. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, for sure going to speak to the media. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon.